My man, Connor Letourneau. You can follow him on Twitter at CON_CHRON. Former beat writer, still covers the Warriors for the San Francisco Chronicle. Connor, it's an off day. Doesn't mean there's a shortage of news. Are you ready to go and rock this scene?
Yeah, man. Off days are the best days. Like I always felt like when I was on the beat, my best coverage was on off days. So let's do it.
Let's get into it. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com and use the promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Connor Letourneau, again, you can follow him on Twitter at _Cron. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow, and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Connor, great to see you, my man. You just you were covering the Warriors all day at Chase Center. They had a few press conference interviews scheduled. Steve Kerr was the one I was evaluating. I tried to get a question and I did not, but he said something very interesting when it came to Nemanja Bjelica, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. If not, my apologies. Where he admitted that Belly is going to be part of the postseason rotation. He even listed the 5 guys that are going to be on the court, the 4 alongside Belly being Gary Payton II, Andre Iguodala, Otto Porter Jr., and the pool party, Jordan Poole. What did you take from that and the overall interviews today?
Yeah, I think Belly's emergence has been one of the more surprising developments in the late part of the season, the latter part of the season. Just a few weeks ago, I had personally kind of written him off. But what I'm realizing about Belly is that he's one of those guys who needs players like Draymond and Iguodala out there to showcase what he can do. Everyone knows Belly as a pick and pop big, as a floor spacing big. You know, the thing about Belly that I've always liked is he's a really good passer. He came up playing the game as a point guard. You can kind of see that in his game. He sees the floor really well. He sets good screens. He moves off the ball well. His big hole is that he can't play defense. But having Draymond out there helps him disguise some of that, hide some of that. And, you saw in the sack game him go off and he really showcase his strengths. And so I'm not shocked to see Steve, voice support. I don't think that I'm not convinced that Belly will be an every game rotation piece in the playoffs, but he'll definitely get minutes. One thing I'm curious about, what does that mean for Kuminga? Is Kuminga not in the playoff rotation right now? It kind of seems like it.
Dude, I would that literally so the way, for people that aren't familiar with this, the way these press conferences work is individuals like yourself and a lot of other reporters and media members are at Chase Center where they hold this thing, and then since the pandemic they opened up the Zoom feature, which for people like me that hate leaving their house is amazing. Anthony Slater, who's usually there for some reason, wasn't. He was on the Zoom with me, and I tried to get in there. I just thought of a question at the end, but it was either too late or I don't know, man. Kerr is kind of being selective with who he takes Zoom questions from these days, and maybe rightfully so. But I wanted to ask about that, about Kuminga and what he sees in terms of his postseason role, because it's a great question. I mean, Kobe Bryant in his rookie season, I mean, he was straight out of high school. I think it was a year younger than Kuminga. Did play the postseason with mixed results. I think back then Phil Jackson saw. I don't know if Phil was a coach then, but if he was, I think he saw the greatness in Kobe and just didn't want to slow him down and shelter him and hide him. And I kind of feel the same way about Kuminga. Like, if you're Kerr and based off your own personal experience with the team, like, do you think Kuminga plays in the postseason and would you play him?
Well, on a basic level, is Kuminga one of the best 8 players on this team? I personally think he is. I really do. I know that he's not – when it comes to the playoffs, coaches want to lean in to guys who are established, who are proven commodities, who don't make a lot of mistakes, guys who you can throw them out there and know what you're going to get out of them. And Kuminga isn't that. He's definitely a rookie. He's definitely a 19-year-old rookie who's going to go out there and make mistakes, but he has proven that when he plays hard, he can overshadow any mistakes he's going to make. He's definitely a net positive already at this stage of his career. And so I personally think he can bring more to the table even than someone like Belly, even though I was just over here complimenting Belly a lot.
I'm with you.
I think that when push comes to shove, you're going to get more out of Kuminga. He's also much better defensively. And, you know, that old saying, defense wins championships,
Yep.
right? So if it was between Belly and Kuminga for the final rotation spot in the playoffs, I would give it to Kuminga. But that's just me. I don't get paid Steve Kerr money. So
100% with you, dude. That's exactly how I feel. And you're right, man. When you're as physically talented as Kuminga is, he can overcome these deficiencies that still plague him, given he's a rookie. The one thing I liked about Kerr specifying the rotation is Belly being out there with those other four individuals makes up for a lot of his own deficiencies defensively. When you have Gary Payton II, who's clearly earned a role in this team, when you have Andre Iguodala, who sat out the whole year pretty much until just a few days ago, and now he's going to be part of the rotation, obviously. And Otto Porter Jr., I think, is an underrated defender as well. He's just a great all-around player, although he has had some moments where he deserves criticism defensively. But overall, he's a solid player. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes out there.
Yeah,
I could see Belly fitting in. But
and
dude, what are your thoughts?
From what I can tell about Belly defensively, and I haven't done a deep dive on his defensive film or anything, but from what I can tell just watching the games is that he understands spacing and angles. He knows where to physically be. He's just, doesn't have great lateral quickness and, doesn't have the physical tools to be great defensively, but he understands how to play defense, which, is more than you can say about a lot of guys. And I think when you have guys who are more physically gifted on the floor with him defensively, it definitely does help. And, I think he knows how to play help side and do all those types of things. I don't think he's the level of a defensive liability that some other players have been. Quinn Cook or whatever. Some other role players, the Warriors, Nick Young, some other role players the Warriors have had over the years.
Schmick Young. Sorry. No, but I hear what you're saying. No, that is funny. So speaking of defense, a player that I've been a little critical of recently defensively, and I think justifiably so. I never really got any pushback on this, is Klay Thompson. I feel like that's one part of his game that has regressed. Remains to be seen if this just because of the layoff and he's trying to regain his footing, but people are blowing by him defensively like they are with Belly. And Klay, and I guess first off, do you agree with that? Like, do you think Klay is kind of hurting the team defensively a little bit, or am I wrong here?
No, I mean, defense is hard sometimes because, I think a lot of people put a ton of stock in defensive rating and things like that, but defensive ratings can be misleading. It depends on who you're on the floor with. Some people are more into the really niche defensive stats, like defensive real plus minus and things like that. But all those are can be misleading. And if you remember when Klay Thompson was named all defensive team, his defensive analytics were not good. They've never been great, actually. With him, it's kind of an eye test thing. You can watch a game and know that he's doing his part, that he's making life difficult on these high scoring wings. And he definitely does seem a step slow defensively. And to me, that was always the big question for him coming back. I felt like offensively, he's always been a catch and shoot guy. He's always been good moving off the ball. I didn't think that would be a huge issue coming off those injuries, but in terms of his lateral quickness, that was a bigger question. And I think that's playing true to form a little bit.
I totally agree with you, man. And in just a moment, I'm going to play this video from the press conference because I was there for the Kerr aspect of it. Damian Lee was answering a lot of questions. I tuned out before Klay Thompson arrived, but Klay it was feisty version of Klay. It was a I don't care about you and I don't want to be here, Klay. And we'll cover that in just a moment. First off, PrizePicks, a longtime sponsor of this program, is an awesome way to play online sports, right? It's daily fantasy. You're betting with money, and it's an award-winning app. PrizePicks is fun. And it's easy to use. You just pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. So Bjelica, for example, you could bet on him maybe scoring a certain amount of points. He had an awesome game against the Kings. That is a king, so we'll see how it goes long term. But the point is, you could actually make money on these kinds of projections. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. And one of the best parts is it's an easy withdrawal process in terms of getting your money back. That's always a massive plus for me. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores just a single point. But you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use our code NBA to get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores just a single point. And today's show is also brought to you by BetOnline. This is definitely a gambling commercial break right here. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all your betting needs and sports information. So, for example, if you want to make some picks with PrizePicks, go to BetOnline.net to get the information you need before you make that pick. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championships. I'm really stoked on that. Odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. Connor, do you follow the Masters? Are you a golf aficionado?
No, not at all. I don't follow golf at all, to be honest with you.
I love it. I love it. This is short and sweet. Well, you can find all the latest sports developments, including the Masters, as I just mentioned, by just going to betonline.net. They're your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online. It's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts, free and available wherever you get podcasts. Connor Letourneau is on Twitter at CON_CHRON. Con_Cron. Con, I want to say on a personal note, I really love doing shows with you. I dig our chemistry. So thanks for coming on today, man. It's always fun. Dude, tell me do you mind telling the audience what you told me a moment ago about Klay Thompson's demeanor and his attitude in the press conference? Because I find it amusing personally.
Yeah. So, the thing about Klay is, he's not, even though he's historically beloved by media members and fans, he often just is not into it. And today he was really not feeling it. He was way late. I mean, we're all waiting around for, I want to say, an hour, close to an hour. It felt like an hour. If it wasn't an hour, it felt like an hour for a long time just to talk to him. And he shows up and he sits down and he pulls out his phone. And he's just scrolling through his phone, texting people, doing his thing. We start asking him questions. He's still texting people. I'm gonna play this video on mute while you're talking, just to show people, because 95.7 The Game's Twitter account literally captured the video footage. Continue on, please, while I play this. Yeah, he literally just did not seem to care about the fact that he was in a press conference setting. I mean, and he was, how when you're trying to answer someone, but you're not actually thinking about what you're saying because you're distracted. Oh, yeah. That's definitely where he was, to the point where Kareth even asked him, "What are you doing?" And he was like, just responding to some texts, and just kind of just not even understanding that we're kind of calling you out right here. He just didn't care, He doesn't care. No, of course he doesn't care. No. And he finally puts his head up. That was comedy, man. He does not care at all. A huge reason we're recording this, by the way. Klay has somehow worked it so that he can do things that everyone else would think was completely rude and disrespectful and would upset everyone else if anyone else did it. But if Klay does it, it's all good, bro. You're Klay, man. He's got the cachet, man. He's got the cachet. Bro. You're right. Not many people can get away with it. But so what did he say when you asked him a great question? And we're going to lead into another story topic in a second as well. You brought up Bjelica. And you said he got kind of passionate. That got his attention. What did he say about that? I couldn't find the videos. I asked him a question about Belly, and basically I ended it with something to the effect of, do you think that because he's somewhat of a unique player that maybe the casual fan can't fully appreciate his game? And he was like, I forget exactly what he said, but it was something to the effect of, oh, dude, screw fans, man. Like, we don't care about fans. Like, there's those diehards out there who loved us when we were losing, but anyone who's come on since we started winning, like, screw you. Like, we don't need you guys. You're just talking shit and blah, blah, blah. And he felt like very passionate about it. And it was like, okay, I was just asking you a question about Belly. I was not asking for your thoughts on the fan base. But he went on this little rant and then eventually caught himself, and I was like, oh yeah, it's about Belly. So then he answered my question about Belly. But
that's revealing though, man, because what that tells me is that, I mean, we all know that these players, and there's a huge reason why NBA Twitter is a thing, is because all these players we know are checking regularly what people are saying about them, and this is clearly revealing that they're seeing the criticism. I do love that Klay has to add in. What's up?
Did you know that every single day, every member in the Warriors is emailed the clips about the team? Every single story that's written about the clips, written about the team, is emailed to the coaches and players and front office people every single day.
For better or worse, like it's so regardless of what.
Everything that's written. So the negative stuff is sent to them. Everything is sent to them.
Does that include tweets?
No.
Okay.
It's stories. So everything I write, everything Slater writes, everything any of the beat writers or national guys writes is sent in a email to every member of the organization every single day. So it's not even that they have to actively search for this. I mean, it's literally sent to them. And
it's handed to them. That's crazy.
I know some ignore that email every day, just like I'm sure all of us employees ignore certain emails from our employers every day.
Yes.
And some of them read every, not maybe every single story, but they thoroughly vet what is sent to them every day. And that's something I learned my first year on the beat, because I was like, man, because Steve would pull me aside or something, or some random assistant would pull me aside about a story. I'm like, wow, are they checking Twitter that much? And I realized, no, they just emailed them.
That's that goes to a few years back. There was that infamous exchange at a press conference between Kevin Durant and Ethan Strauss, which I'm guessing resulted largely from those emails, right?
Well, Kevin might have actually. Kevin monitored Twitter very closely, so there is a chance he found that on Twitter. But I mean, they are abreast on everything that's written about him, and not everything I write about the Warriors is positive. That all those
I've never seen you ever attack an individual though. At least have you been called out for that by players
for attacking a player? No, I think what I've gotten. What I've had people take issue with before are my headlines and stories. Like and I'm like, did you read the story though? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, I didn't write the headline, first of all. And second of all, read the story and you'll see that even if I dealt with a subject matter that was maybe a little tricky or maybe not the most positive, I think you'll see that I handled it with care, because I try to handle everything with care and navigate. I mean, I'm not out here to bash people. Like, I'm out here to enlighten and inform and hopefully move the needle in terms of insight. And so I've never bashed anyone. I think any writer who bashes someone in a story, A, has some personal vendetta against that person, B, is unprofessional, and C, probably, isn't the most skilled writer.
Yep. And look, this is one of those things. It's very esoteric. If you haven't worked in sports media, it's a lot harder to understand. But I have seen a lot of altercations, a lot of confrontations between athletes and reporters, where athletes are just getting right in the face of a media member, really upset. I mean, there's a lot of sensitivity when something's written about them, and most of the time, just very unfounded. Like because I saw I remember seeing an altercation one time many years ago with AJ Pierzynski of the then San Francisco Giants. I forgot whose face he got into, and I was like, "What is this about?" And then I read the story, and it was the most harmless, innocuous content I've ever written.
Sometimes these guys will get upset about things without reading them. Like I said,
that's crazy.
They'll get upset about the headline, or they'll get upset about what they were told the story was about. And the few times where I've been approached by a player or a coach about something I wrote because they weren't happy about it, the first thing I ask is, did you read the story? and sometimes they'll say straight up no, and sometimes they'll say, well, I read the lead, or I read the beginning of it, and it's like, no, you need to read the whole story before I'm going to have a conversation with you about this. Like, go quick, pull out your phone, read it real quick. It'll take you 2 minutes, and then we can have a conversation about it, because I can't have an enlightened conversation with you about something I wrote unless you actually read it.
Right. That is totally fair on your part. And you know what I love that Twitter's doing now is if you reply to a tweet that has a story, it actually literally says, do you want to read the article first? I really love that feature. I mean, I'm guessing most people still say no, but
I get on my soapbox even more a little bit. Like, people in America don't read anymore, man. People don't read. No. And I think if people just read, if you stayed up on current events, if you just, checked out the New York Times, Washington Post every day, read the big headlines on your local paper, read the stories on the front page of your paper every day, the world would be such a better place, man.
Agreed, really, man. No, there's nothing I can say to that except yes, you are right. Well, I want to save people money because that's a huge problem in this world, and maybe they just don't have time to read as much as they used to because they're constantly working, and I hope that's not the case, but people should be reading. But if you need to save money, Rock Auto is a great way to do that. I mean, we are all driving. Nearly all of us have cars out there since this pandemic started. Way more people are driving than before because most people want to avoid public transportation. And with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like, is your Honda Odyssey an LX or an EX, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have the computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? An example being the same Honda Odyssey I just mentioned a moment ago. Their fuel pump is $353 from a chain store, just $216 from Rock Auto. They're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every customer. I love having a sponsor that I could actually personally endorse. Rock Auto is legit. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us section so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. Your paper is producing, I believe, not one, but two awesome profile pieces on members of the Golden State Warriors. CJ Holmes was on with me yesterday and said that his Jordan Poole piece was almost finalized, and that is really exclusive. I mean, you don't see Jordan Poole doing many interviews, but then you're working on a really exclusive profile piece as well with Bjelica, who we've been talking about today.
I love the hype machine, man. It's not a big deal story, bro. It's like,
I think it is. I think it is. I mean, these aren't stories you read often, and great profile pieces are how you learn about these individuals. How was your interview with Bjelica, man?
It was good. It was good. When I was on the beat, like, one of my things was I really tried to have sit downs with every member of the organization, because I think every member of the organization has an interesting story to tell, and I think it's really easy to just focus on the big name guys. But I was always attracted to kind of the role player type guys, because I think oftentimes they have more to say because their story hasn't been told. Whereas everyone knows everything there is to know about Steph Curry. Everyone knows. I've read the same 3 stories about Draymond Green millions of times. And I'm not saying there isn't anything new to say about Draymond, but it's hard. Yeah, so for me, it was all just about like trying to say something new and interesting. And I talked to Belly earlier in the season, and he revealed to me that he almost left the NBA last summer, that he almost went back to Europe. He was kind of disappointed and frustrated by how his career was going. He felt like he wasn't utilized properly. Keep in mind, this guy was EuroLeague MVP in Europe before he came over, and he went from that to being a role player on bad teams. You know, he was in Minnesota, then he was in Sacramento, then he was on a good Heat team but wasn't playing.
Right.
And so I think there was a lot of frustration, and I think he feels like for the first time in his career, he's in a situation with Golden State where he's valued. And Steve Kerr said something interesting today. He said that by giving Belly those 2 DMPs recently, he realized he was reminded of Belly's value, because he basically said the offense doesn't flow as well. We're not as much of in rhythm. And that's what I talked to Belly a lot about, is just kind of the nature of his game and how, how it is being the type of player where your value carries a certain level of nuance to it. And he basically said that he felt like there were coaches in his past who didn't understand what he was as a player. You know, they just thought he was a pick and pop big. And as we talked about earlier on this podcast, he's a really good passer, man. He can initiate the offense. Like he was a starting point guard in the EuroLeague for years. People don't
point guard.
Point guard, yeah.
Wow.
He told me today he started every position in his career.
That's versatility, literally. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've been critical of him for the last 2-3 months simply because there's been a clear regression. I don't know if the injury played a part in that. And like you said, Kerr mentioned the fact that he was out. Players have to play to gain a rhythm. But defensively, I was really critical. I still don't know if defensively he's suddenly turned things around. Offensively, though, he clearly has. He gives them a post-up player that they really don't have otherwise, with the exception of maybe Kuminga. And yeah, it looks like he's going to be playing the postseason. So if it's 2021 Belly, I'm all in, dude. I want to share with you. I did this this poll. I want to get into some fun subjects here before you go. I did this poll on Twitter with the Locked On Dubs account. That it was a trade proposal. Weird timing, but the timing for me wasn't that weird, just in the sense that the Lakers season is pretty much over. It's not official yet, but it's about to be. The Warriors play them Thursday and could literally put that sword right through the heart and finish the season once and for all. But my trade proposal was this, and I actually thought of a similar trade to this during the offseason because I got the receipts, man. I was calling the Lakers end back in last August, and I'm not bragging about that. I think a lot of people were, but I was saying that if the Lakers are smart, they would start the rebuild last year, not go through this whole ridiculous season, especially with Westbrook. But what do you think of this trade, man? Because this was surprisingly divisive. It was a 55-45 vote final where the Warriors would hypothetically trade Andrew Wiggins. So I think you and I both are on the same page where he is not part of the long-term plan unless he takes a drastic pay cut, which neither of us see happening. No. So would you trade Wiggins, James Wiseman, and 3 future first-rounders for Anthony Davis of the Lakers? Would you agree to that, and why?
That's honestly a great question, and it's great because you didn't include Kuminga in that question. No. If you had included Kuminga, I would have been like, I'm not trading Kuminga. But, Anthony Davis is 29 years old. Here's the thing. I don't actually think Anthony Davis would be a great fit on the Warriors.
Interesting.
The way he plays, it's not super conducive, in my opinion, to the Warriors system. I mean, the Warriors historically have not wanted 20 and 10 bigs. They don't go after those guys. There's a reason for it. The way their system is built, they need that big man to be more of a fulcrum of the offense, to be able to read and react, not necessarily be a go-to guy. That's why Kevon Looney has been so good for the Warriors, why David West and Zaza Pachulia had nice roles for the Warriors. Anthony Davis is so talented where if you could have him, I'm sure you would take him and figure it out. Yeah. But is it worth giving up all that for someone who I don't think isn't necessarily a perfect fit? I don't know. Like you said, Andrew Wiggins, I haven't looked at the salary cap ramifications of this or of Anthony Davis's contract or anything, but just surface level, they're not going to be able to afford Andrew Wiggins long-term anyway.
Right.
They have a really important deadline coming up with James Wiseman. October 31st. 12.1.
You wrote a story about this, by the way. I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to touch on this and I almost forgot. You wrote a great story on this about a week or two ago about James Wiseman's future with the team. And that actually partly prompted this trade because you're right. He's commanding $12 million a year. He's barely played ever. Didn't play it all this year. What is, in your opinion, what do you think the long-term plan is for James Wiseman? Like, I mean, I know it's hard to tell because
that's the reason I wrote that story is because I was kind of like looking at it when they announced, when it became clear that he wasn't going to play the rest of the season. I wrote that story technically right before they officially announced that he was shut down for the year, but it was pretty clear he wasn't going to play. And I was asking myself, why is no one talking about what this means for his future? Like, he has his player option needs to be picked up October 31st, which is toward the beginning of next season. And he's missing the rest of this season.
Yep.
And best case scenario, he's back for summer league, okay, which would be his first summer league. And so, but it's summer league. Like, it's hard to fully evaluate someone in summer league against all these guys who aren't going to play in the NBA and rookies. And then you go into the regular season and he'll have like a couple of weeks until you have to decide whether or not to pick up his option. And to me, that's an impossible situation for the Warriors because that, from a salary cap standpoint, a financial standpoint, that's a really important decision because as we've talked about on the call before, they're already so deep into the luxury tax. $12 million is going to be exponentially more with the luxury tax, and that's an enormous investment in a player who has not really proven anything yet. On the flip side of that is, what else are the Warriors supposed to do? I mean, they can't really trade him. He doesn't really have any market value right now. And you don't just let him walk. You don't just like not pick up the option and not trade him. You got to get something back for him. He was a number 2 pick. He still has a lot of potential. So I think they're going to end up picking up the option just because there's not a better option for them. But it's not an ideal situation at all.
And it's fascinating to me because on one hand, if the Warriors just basically don't re-sign him, their pride's going to get bruised because they're going to admit that they wasted a number 2 pick on nothing. But if they keep him, they got to spend that extra money, which we've also come to the realization they don't like doing. So either direction is not one they really like, and they're in a pickle, man.
It's a lesser of two evils, but the truth is that if they pick up the option and he ends up being a total bust, which is a possibility, like that could be disastrous for them. And
that's part of the reason why I proposed that trade, because at least for next year, the Warriors would save money. Anthony Davis.
So the more I think about it, I would do that trade. Because I also think that you have enough really good young guys right now to build around for the long-term future.
Yes.
So like Jordan Poole is the dude. Kuminga's the dude. Moody is going to be a really good rotation player for a long time in this league. You can build around those guys. My point being, you don't need to have a bunch of first next couple of years. And then that'll also help you out salary cap wise in a major way. And it also solves some problems in terms of you don't have to have all the hand wringing and frustrations and confusion around what to do with Weisman and Wiggins, because unless something like this comes up, they're going to have some really tough decisions to make.
Oh, heck yeah. And last time we had you on, I think you mentioned that the Warriors reportedly eyeing a 4-year, $80 million extension for Poole. That was like 3 weeks ago.
He's been even better, yeah.
A lot has changed.
I heard someone on the radio say like $30 million a year, which, I mean, that's a lot of money. The thing is, there's probably going to be a team out there that if he hits restricted free agency, there's probably going to be a team out there that's just going to make an absolute absurd offer sheet for him.
Well, and what I don't like about letting him go to restricted free agency is he could totally screw the Warriors by accepting a 1-year deal. And then he would be just completely on the open market a year later, even if the Warriors match that. That's why I really don't want the Warriors to let him get.
It'll be up to him though. Like they could bring him a 4-year, $80 million contract tomorrow, and if I wouldn't blame him for wanting to see what the market is for himself. So it's very possible that he'll end up hitting restricted free agency, getting some crazy absurd offer from like Orlando or just from a team that just desperately needs a face of the franchise.
San Antonio. There's a lot of there's teams out there I think would want him.
San Antonio almost drafted him. So I could see that. I could see that happening, but even if he gets a crazy offer sheet, I honestly think the Warriors will do whatever they need to do to keep him long term. Especially when you have a homegrown guy like that. Also, you know how it is. It's like they feel pretty good about the fact that they took him 28th. Like that's like there's some pride factor there. Like we found him. You also took Jacob Evans at 28th the year before, but we can forget about that. Jacob Evans, the 9th man for the Santa Cruz Warriors right now.
I mean, look, it's hard to score with those late picks. Because Jordan Bell is another name they drafted late, and these are guys who are now
Patrick
in the G League. And
Patrick McCaw.
I think 33% success rate when you're picking that late is good. I got to give Myers credit for that.
He was 30th, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I want to, dude, if you got to run, just do some symbol to me, man, because I want to touch on one more thing with you, maybe even two, but at least one. Here's what I want to share the screen with you. Draymond Green, who is now an NBA player and a media member, recently announced his award picks. Would love your thoughts. You've literally been a voter for these awards in the past. I don't know if you're voting this year. I guess I'd like if you could clarify that as well. Are you voting?
No, I'm off the beat. So that would probably.
So it might be CJ. So and who's your MVP this year?
That's an interesting pick. I honestly don't feel like
Draymond
Devin Booker gets enough love in that conversation. I don't think that he should be MVP, but I understand. I can see, just looking at this list, I see what Draymond's thought process was in putting it together. He obviously really values winning, which isn't a surprise.
Yes.
And I was having this conversation with someone yesterday about Jordan Poole's most improved player chances. If he's not the front runner for MIP, he should be. He really should be. When I had looked at it like a month ago, he was like not even in terms of Vegas odds and stuff. He was like 5th, and I was like, he should at least be in the top 2 or 3. And I think what he's done the past couple of weeks, he should be the front runner. So I would have him as my most improved player. I don't know right now who I'd have as my MVP. I'd have to think about it, but I understand why you'd have Booker. I don't think the Suns get enough love. I mean, what they've done this year has been absolutely incredible. I like the Mikal Bridges Defensive Player of the Year pick. Evan Mobley should 100% be Rookie of the Year. There's a couple of deserving candidates, but Mobley is a freaking stud. And what Cleveland has done this year as a team that no one thought anything of has completely overachieved, in large part because Evan Mobley as a rookie is one of the best big men in this league, 100%. Ime Udoka as Coach of the Year. I'm surprised by that pick a little bit. I wouldn't have him as mine, but
who's your Coach of the Year?
He's a Portland guy, so that's cool. My Coach of the Year, I'd have to think about it. Maybe Bickerstaff. I mean, there's several very deserving candidates. I really like what Jenkins and Memphis is doing. It's the guys who don't have the big names who are like killing it this year.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm pretty set on mine, but again, there's still 3 games, and this season is just that topsy-turvy. I think Giannis deserves MVP. He's such a special player to me. He's still underrated despite the fact that he is a reigning Finals MVP. I also think he should be Defensive Player of the Year. As good as Mikal Bridges has been, I think Giannis has more of an impact defensively. I guess the ultimate thing is for me, if Giannis is not a member of that Bucks team, they're not doing jack squat. Whereas the Suns have shown they could survive without Devin Booker. I hate seeing John Morant mentioned anywhere. I don't think he deserves most improved player just because he's too big of a star, and it's not like he had a bad year last year.
Well, the
So
thing
I'm
about
with you on
John
Jordan.
Morant, as great as John Morant is, what is Memphis's record without him this year?
It's like 18-2 or something.
Like
Maybe that's it's something like that. Yeah, it's insane.
I mean, I think that, and this is a credit to Memphis. Like, I think their system is the MVP, not John Morant.
Yes.
You know,
Agreed.
And like, you look at the Warriors, what's their record without Steph this year? It's really bad.
It's like 4-12 or some weird thing. 3 or 4.
As of a couple days ago, they were 1-6 since he had gotten injured, and then they won a couple games.
Yeah, it's but he also missed games earlier this season because for just standard back-to-backs, taking nights off. It was like 3-12 or 4-12. I bet. Don't quote me on that. It's somewhere in that range.
We should on your next pod. Before your next pod, you should look at the Warriors' record historically in games that Steph has missed. It's incredibly bad.
It's agreed. I have.
Impressively bad. And I remember when Kevin Durant was on the team, when he would miss games, the Warriors' record was well above 500. Like, it was pretty darn good. And then even when Kevin was on the team and Steph would miss games, like, they would always lose. And it's like, Kevin, you're wondering why you're not as beloved?
Yep.
Who's way more important to the team, man? Look at these numbers.
Yeah, no, even now. I mean, Durant dropped 55 the other night. They still lost, and I'm totally with you, dude.
The playoffs. The Brooklyn Nets are not going to make the playoffs is such an embarrassment.
Yes.
Like, Steve Nash should be fired. He won't be, but he should be. Like, that's awful.
That's a strong opinion, dude. And I'm gonna leave you with this though, Connor. You are welcome on this show, and the invite's open. That door is open for you anytime you want to come in. You're such a busy man. I wish you weren't as busy as you are. I want to share this last image with you before I let you go. So this morning, Hall of Famer Rick Barry is going to join the program on Friday. I consider him a close friend. Him and I host a podcast together. And one gripe of his, which I've started to pick up on, is the fact that Bill Simmons, I don't know what your feelings are about Bill Simmons, but personally, Simmons entertains me tremendously. I think his podcast is hilarious. He throws some interesting facts out there, brings some solid guests on. His articles when he was with ESPN were phenomenal. I was thoroughly entertained. But what Simmons has done, which is really, in my opinion, embarrassing and shameful, is that in his book, I've misquoted Simmons. I need to issue an addendum and a correction here, and that Simmons did not call Rick Barry a prick. He called Rick Barry a dick. I apologize. Huge difference. So I need to first clarify that. But he called him a dick. And then he also in his book, the Book of Basketball, he perpetuated this ridiculous story that which has gone around for a long time. It started with Hal McCoy, who is still the voice of the Phoenix Suns, and he was calling that game in 1976 in the Western Conference Finals, Game 7, where Rick Barry got into a fight early in the game, and Hal McCoy makes the accusation that none of his teammates stood up for him, that Rick was in this fight all by himself. You could look at the YouTube video and see that is not true, and that Rick Barry was so upset at his teammates that he just took the second half off, basically. It's an absurd accusation.
There's no Rick personally?
No, but Bill Simmons went ahead and wrote all this stuff in the book based off how I did the research. It's based off Hal McCoy's testimony. Like, it's his testimonial that he's basing this as fact. There's no truth to it whatsoever. And the part that's really upsetting and unethical is that Simmons will not invite Rick on his show. They've never met. All he does is base these accusations on hearsay. And it's absurd. It's offensive. And so I started deciding every time I mention a tweet with Bill Simmons, I include this disclaimer that has disclaimer. Bill Simmons called Rick Barry a prick. I'm sorry, it was Dick. Rick corrected me on that. And that he also perpetuates this ridiculous falsehood
Bill, and I like Bill. I like what the Ringer's doing. But he's unique. I'll just say that in the sense that he's carved out this lane, this incredibly successful lane that is unique to him. And I don't think I'm not sure if anyone else could be successful in that lane. And by that, I mean, like, the diehard fanboy journalist guy. And look, it works for him. He's made it work, but it's unique. And I don't know anyone else who is openly rooting for teams and being a journalist. Like, it's an interesting thing. that he has.
You count me in that thing, but I'm not writing these days. I'm just
not
talking on a
judging.
podcast.
I actually think what he's done in his career is phenomenal. I think he's incredibly skilled. His deadline writing, I've read some of his deadline writing, and it is masterful. The guy is skilled and talented. It's just his lane is so unique. It's literally the Bill Simmons lane, and that's it.
It's unique, man. It's almost like there's few people in this world that just really carve their own niche. You're right. Simmons is one of them. Like Charles Barkley, no one else can do what he does. No one else can say what he does and get away with it. It's just some people have really established themselves. Who Klay Thompson? Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so, but Bill, man, just he blocked me today, which shows me, he was reading my tweets, which was kind of fascinating because he always claims he never looks at Twitter except for information from certain people. And he saw me tagging him. But, dude, Bill, just bring Rick on your show, man. Like, just stop perpetuating these falsehoods about him. Just clear the air. I don't understand why he's like hiding. This is what he's doing, essentially. He's hiding from Rick Barry. It's like Rick doesn't bite, man. Just clear the air. And then if you still hate me and want to block me, continue on. That's fine. But I just, that was it. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON. He works for the San Francisco Chronicle, producing phenomenal content. You can follow me on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Connor, man, I hope to have you on back soon. Always a pleasure. Love you, man.
Yeah,
have
bro.
A great day, dude.
And when we got to meet up in San Ramon one of these days, man.
You're going to be living here full time in a month, right?
Yeah, soon. In the near future.
I have a beautiful backyard. We're hanging out. All right. Cool. I got a spacious backyard. We'll hang out inside the house too, but the weather's about to warm up. So yeah, we're hanging out, dude. Long story short, yes, man, I'm on board. And thank you, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow with Damon Bruce. I haven't talked to him in a long time. Speaking of someone who lights up a lot of fires, for better or worse, man, that guy definitely entertains. And so Damon will join me tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Later.